Okay, so this is going to be a pretty down and dirty thing. Just simply done on my webcam. And alright, here's the situation. This is going to be a pretty down and dirty thing. I bought this kit. This is the original series Enterprise glow-in-the-dark Tholian Web edition. And it's done on the original molding from the 70s, and even though I got to admit that it's not the greatest kit as far as stability and putting together and everything, it was a lot of fun to do because there's just that huge nostalgic factor on it. I mean, a couple of decades ago when I first bought these kits, I think I put together like 7 of them. I had half of the fleet, and as they got damaged, the kit bashed into other things. So it was a great joy to get this. But primarily, I've never really been much of a model builder so much as I've been doing these. I did these when I was young to have the toy. So everything was from that perspective. And in that regard, I'm coming at this almost from a beginner to the modeling aspect of it. Now, what I thought was really cool about this kit is the fact that it's glow-in-the-dark. And so I wanted to maintain that integrity. The only videos I've seen online so far having to do with this kit involved one where a guy was putting what I think way too many lights in it, but a cool effect. And I saw that video, and then a few pictures on one of the modeler groups where somebody took this and then actually painted it to make it under daylight look as much as possible like a well-done model, but in my opinion completely destroying any aspect of the glow-in-the-dark bit for it. So in my approach to it, what I've been trying to do is get it as close as possible to the image that we have on the back of the box. I'm looking to make it so that when it's in the dark, it's actually glowing, and the details and impressions and everything are not impeding the glow-in-the-dark, but actually augmenting it. So what I'm going to talk about in this video quickly is some of the ideas that I came up with to try and get these effects without losing the glow-in-the-dark aspect. Before I get onto that, though, let's talk about the decals. These are an amazing number of decals. I would have actually loved these for any of the kits 20-odd years ago, because as with the original kits, you have the option of going with many ships in the fleet, but they've also given you the both pilot versions on the decals. So you have the one that has the hook at the top to it versus the one that doesn't. So you can go with either one of those. Original pilot, second pilot, including the grills, and right through to the actual production series model. But you also have the ISS Imperial Enterprise version. So from the Mirror episode. So that's very cool. Very great decals on that regard. And would have loved to have had that. And the instruction sheet, and I got a 2-page instruction sheet just for putting the decals on, which again is incredible. And you see here you've got the original pilot version, the second pilot version, and then the Mirror Universe version decal placement, as well as the decal placement for the production series, including, depending on which you prefer to go with, a list of ships and their registry numbers, excuse me. And then the 2 other things that the kit comes with, one is the THOLIAN WEB, which I think is a brilliant background and wasn't expecting. It also came with small Tholian craft. So getting to the ship, here's what I did. I only worked with basically 2 colors. One was the Tamiya color, the clear red for plastic, and that was because I just couldn't imagine not having the red nacelle caps, and I was kind of hoping that this really wouldn't impede the glow-in-the-dark at all, and unfortunately it does. It manages to block it out quite well. So I will be attempting to put in an LED behind each one of the nacelle caps so I can get that effect, although I'm looking at ways of taking that down a few notches. As far as the rest of the details were concerned, what I went with from my local hobby shop was actually a thing called Alclad 2 lacquer. It's a transparent smoke. It's primarily designed, I don't know if the camera will be able to pick that up, but it's primarily designed for tinting the clear parts for auto models so that you can make it look like they have smoked windows. And so what I did is I used that either in multiple layers or putting it on in a single layer and sometimes trying to rub it off, and then in other cases actually putting it on, as I did with the shuttle bay here, and then scratching it off just to get the detail so that the glow-in-the-dark still comes through. In the case of the deflector housing, I went with I sprayed some of the clear red into it and then put it in to try and give it a tinted and colored thing. But ultimately I ended up scraping off the very edges because, again, as I said, I'm looking for this to glow up when the lights are out. So with the deflector dish, here's another example of it where I mixed the smoke tint with a shot of the Chimera clear red, and then after it had dried, I took an X-Acto knife and I etched out the glow-in-the-dark so that it still will glow. So, because I want that effect. I want that effect when it's dark. Another example on the Bussard housing on the nacelles. Put it on, just scraped it off. Try not to get all of it off because, again, I wanted it to be to differentiate from the rest of the nacelle. But I also wanted the black etching in there. Similarly, farther down the nacelle with the intercooler, and again, put it on, wiped it off as much as I could just to get that smoke effect. And then here it is on the back end of the nacelle for the detailing, and that I'm far less concerned about. In the course of working with all this, though, I did discover something. When you get the model, and here it is partially put together, when you get the model, there was an area where there was a black lettering etched by the manufacturer in China. And the weird thing about this is the glow-in-the-dark stuff, it's as I said, it's kind of malleable and it's kind of brittle, but it's also got the combination of being both opaque and not opaque. So what happens with anything like that is that it ends up coming through. So I scratched that off, but in doing so, I came up with a way, as you can see here, of doing the triangles that are on the underside of the Enterprise, which you don't see as well in the daylight, but once you get light behind it, you really see it. And here it is without the top dish on it, and it shows up really, really well this way. Let's see if I can find a good angle for it. Shows up really, really well this way. Well, the thing to remember is that every bit of this plastic, when charged, is a light source. So now it's an interior detail, but it ends up showing up, and it ends up showing up very subtle, and I really, really like that. So here I've done some of the wiring for the nacelle cap. I'm actually using a rubber blocker that is actually at Christmas. One of those plungers for putting in the glass to put your Christmas lights on the windows. Trimmed off all the rest of it, punched a hole in the middle of it, and then covered it with electrical tape, and then glue gunned it in there. So when I do power up the lights, it'll be, I'm trying to get it as low as I can on the lighting, because I don't want it to have too much light bleed. I don't want to power up too much from the front of the nacelle. I just want the sense of it. And so again here, as we go through on the detailing, this is what I mean. Here's the intercoolers. Looking back on it, I think what I should have done was the reverse, so that there was a tinting around it, and then done as I did with this detail here. I should have actually done the middle section behind, so it would give the relief through it. But I didn't, and I'm kind of too far along at this point to try and pry this apart, because this stuff is much more brittle than the normal thing. So here's an indication of how it's going to look, and again, at every stage, my focus is seeing what it looks like when it's actually in the dark, and then it lights up. So as I continue on, I will add to this. But if I don't, if for some reason I don't feel a need to carry on, or I can't get decent glow-in-the-dark stills even of it, then basically understand that at this point, this is pretty much everything I've discovered about this model. All that remains now is to assemble it and then pick the decaling that I'm going to put on it. And yes, it will be the Defiant, because I do intend on having the THOLIAN web behind it. But I love the glow-in-the-dark stuff. And a final note, as I indicated on the decals, I won't be painting this part here, because there is a wonderful decal for it that'll give you the effect. And I can't wait to see what this looks like with the decaling underneath. So there we go.